thought I should show you real quick before I set this back in the car. So where all the plug welds are, I flipped it over because I drilled them through, so there was some slag on this end. So I cleaned all that up on all of these holes, and then so before we do the final time we set this in, I'll probably red Scotch-Brite this whole thing to give it a little bit of tooth, and then I'll throw some weld-through primer on here on these spots, and then once it's in the car, this will be all scuffed, and then I'll shoot some primer and paint on the underside of it. So now I'm going to put it back in the car. Alright, so I told you I'd show the seat frame that I made. It hasn't been cleaned up or softened up yet. Everything's still kind of sharp edges and all that, but those two brackets that I showed you that I put in there, that's how they mount. And I did the same thing on this side when I put this side of the floor in. So that seat bracket's for a Pro Car bucket seat, aftermarket deal. I didn't like the brackets that I purchased. They were way too high. So anyway, if you have to find yourself needing to figure out how to put seats in, I've got a video on that. So now what we're going to do is, we have to cut to fit here. So I'm just going to trace this over here. And then same thing here. And then we're going to mark all of these spot weld holes. Alright, real quick, so you can see I marked all the spots that we had drilled out along here too. You see I got kind of close to this edge. This is a bummer, but I think I'll be fine. Same here. Those are marked, so since I have the floor out now, I will go ahead and trim those up because those have to be cut to fit right there and there. Also, I didn't have this ready like I thought I did. So I cleaned this all up, primed it, and I'll have to put the floor back in and mark for those plug welds. And also, I forgot, I need to cut to fit this up here from this edge to here, because if we were to cut it, we wouldn't be able to get that metal off the backside. There's no way to get it out. So I'll put the floor back in and mark this, and then we'll have to cut it to fit. So no big deal. Alright, I've got a line drawn across the top here. If you can see, there's a bit of a gap here. This is not going flush here. I can kind of force it in, but also you can see that the indentation here and this one don't line up very well. So when I pull the floor back out, I'm going to flatten this one out a bit, try to make it sit better. And basically from here, this is all pretty flush. I kind of hammered that in a bit because it was sitting a little proud. But from this point on to here, I'm having a hard time getting it to sort of fold over. So I'm going to take it out of the car, straighten that out, and I'm going to try to take this whole tab here and bend it that way a little bit, try to get it to sit up more flush. If that doesn't work, I'll probably just do a couple relief cuts like we did in the back there, just to separate it and get it to fold down in, and we'll see. I did cut the floor out here, so we're sitting flush. I need to trim just a little bit right here. I made a couple marks, and here I think we're going to look pretty good once this folds in like it's supposed to. So we'll see. So I'm going to pull it back out now and do what I just told you. All right, I added a hole here for another plug weld in that corner, and I also added one here. What I'm doing now is I took the paint off of here. I cut through this. The first time I cut the floor, I cut through. It didn't go all the way through, but it's pretty deep, so I'm going to weld this up right here. Okay, here's where I'm at. I took some paint. I'm using this epoxy paint. I don't know if it's any good or not, but that's what I'm using. And I just did everything that's going to be covered over. I painted it. So in these valleys here, and then also on this back brace. I probably wouldn't have done this had I not needed to do this. I really wanted to cover this in some good paint because it had more corrosion than the rest of it. And of course I ground it out as much as I could and treated it, but I wanted to get a good coat of paint in there. I probably could have used some Pour 15 or something, but I just used what I used. So while this is drying, I'm just taking some red Scotch-Brite and I'm just kind of scuffing up the bottom of the floor pan just to give it a little bit of tooth so that once it's in there we can primer it and we don't have to try to scuff it once it's in the car. Also, I went around the entire edge, both sides, also underneath, to because I told you I didn't like the way this welded, so I just got rid of the E-coat along where we're going to be welding. And then these areas here, after I scuff it all, I'll shoot these areas here with some weld-through primer so that they're protected after, after it sits in there. But I'm not going to do that till I fit it again, because I'm going to have to fit it again at least one more time. I did bend this tab out like I talked about a little bit to see if it fits more flush on the existing floor. So after that paint dries and I get this all scuffed up, we'll put it back in and see how it's fitting. Alright, I know you guys have seen this several times already, but back in for another fitting. This floor here and this brace are completely flat, so I'm going to go ahead and mark all of the holes again. So we'll take it back out and just grind those off and then weld through primer. I have a little bit of space here and here. The rest down that way seem pretty good, so I'm probably going to drill another 1/8 hole here and here and put some more screws in to suck that down, to make sure I can get it all the way sucked down. And also back here. This one is down nice and flat. This one and this one are raised a little, so I'm going to put another screw here. See if that fixes it. If it doesn't, then I'll put another one here as well. Alright, so I ended up putting 2 screws here. That sucked that down. This one was good. This one I ended up putting 3 screws, but it's now all sucked down. And then I ended up putting 2. Oh, I forgot to put a screw in up the top one there. That'll suck all that one in. So then what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and cut this all the way across with the floor in place, because it's good and tight up here. So I'm gonna just cut this right across and be done with it right now. Alright, so I'm just gonna cut this. I'm gonna cut the floor, the original floor right there, because we got to cut to fit this area. I'm going to try to do it at like a 45-degree angle or so that I don't create a larger gap. We'll get that cut out, and then I have a little area here to touch up over on this side, and a tiny little area here. We'll touch those up, just do a little cut, and then we'll be ready to pull the floor out, grind off the paint where all the plug welds are going to go, and then hit it with some weld-through primer. Okay. Looks like I might have created a kind of a large gap here, but we'll figure it out. So I'm going to pull the floor out, hopefully for the last time. Alright, floor back out for the last time, hopefully. Now we'll grind the paint off everywhere we have marks, including the ones that are just for screws, and we'll paint all those with some weld-through primer. So I'm just using a little disc on here, and we're just gonna weld-through primer, put on all the spots that we ground down. So we're actually finally ready to put the floor in. Now on the bottom side of the floor, I just used weld-through primer on all the spots that we're never going to be able to see again. Here and here. So finally, as soon as this dries, we're going to start putting it in. So don't leave now. All right, floor's in for the last time, I believe. We got our cuts here that line up nice, or cut to fit here. Cut to fit here, I got a little bit of a gap, but I think that'll be okay. There is some gap here, so it's just between these two spots. I think I'm going to make a couple of relief cuts here and here, because I cannot get that to lay down. Everywhere else it's all tight along here, and I did mess up. Remember, I cut this because I thought I couldn't cut and butt this because I didn't think I'd be able to pull the metal out the back. That was wrong. I could have pulled it out the back, but it's too late now. I can't go back. So I have a little bit of a gap here I'm going to have to deal with. But I can get it started. This lines up pretty well. And let's see up here. All this is tight as well. So first thing I'm going to do, I think I'm going to go ahead and just make a couple of just cuts here, just small cuts, just so I can manipulate this, because you can see that I got a pretty good gap here that I can't get to lay in. And once you get to this point here, that's all tight all through there. Okay, I did my two relief cuts here and here. It does allow a little more pliability now, so I can push this up against the floor. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tack this to this. I'm going to push this in, tack it all along. I'm going to do the whole thing where it overlaps. I'm just going to do tacks every couple inches all the way across. Alright, I'm going to tack the two pieces together. Hopefully I didn't forget anything, because it's going in for good now. Alright, I got it tacked all the way down. Now we'll start cutting through the welds. I'm going to try to do it at like a 45-degree angle, so we create the smallest gap that we possibly can create, and then start tacking it in. In hindsight, I wish I'd have left this piece here come up a little bit higher, because it's got kind of a weird hump right here. So it might look a little funny right here, but you know, oh well, it's the floor. Everything else looks pretty good. I got too big of a gap back here I'm going to have to deal with. That was a screw up. I seem to be okay here. So we'll start doing the old cut and butt now. You can see I'm not great at this yet. But we're going to keep doing that all along the whole way until we get to the parts that we cut to fit, and then we'll push those in and we'll just keep going. If I run into any crazy problems, I'll show you. Okay, let's do a little bit more. I think I'm in a better position now. I think I know what I'm doing a little bit better now. Whoop. So what I figured out is, I think you, once you cut it, you know, it pretty much falls into place. Just give it a little help if it needs it, one way or the other. And then try to go right back over the top of the original weld that you cut through, because you got a little bit more meat there. Seems to work better. Okay. Hopefully that was a little more instructive than the last thing. So I'm going to keep going. Alright, let's look at what we've done. We are flush all the way to this point here. This is where we cut to fit. So that's all good. So we're good up to this point here. And we're going to keep going. But let's take a quick look underneath and see what happens. The piece that we're cutting out. Sorry about the camera. Okay, so this way's the back of the car, that way's the front of the car. This is the piece that we've been cutting out, so now we can come in here and pull this out of here, which I probably can't do very well without gloves because it's very sharp, but you can see, hopefully, that piece has been cut off. And I'm just going to get a pair of gloves and pull this off. Or actually, maybe I can. There we go. So there it is. That's the piece that we cut out. So from the front to that first brace now, we are welded in flush. So I'm going to keep doing the rest. I won't show any more of that because you now know what I'm doing. Alright, I just want to do a little progress update. So I'm good all along here. I welded up solid the areas where we cut to fit. Here and here. I'm doing good all the way through here. I'm starting to get a bit too big of a gap here, and then I really mangled this corner here. I should have used probably a smaller cutting wheel or something, but so all this globby shit here that looks like shit has been an issue. So what I'm doing is, you know, once you get, so you can see I got a piece of wire sitting in here to kind of help take up that gap. I'm going to have to end up fixing some of this from underneath as well, this part of it. When I go and weld all this up, it should be good from underneath, but this is going to be a mess. So what I'm doing is I'm just welding against what's already there. Just keep going like that. So screw up on my part, and then I got big gaps down here again, so this is also going to be a bit of a pain in the ass. So I'll be able to probably do this area up to about right in here, and then once this gap widens out, I'm going to have to mess around with that as well. So that's what I'm doing. All right, I kind of got this back end worked out. Had this all been done according to plan, the entire length all the way around the back would have looked like this, where we just have spot welds like that, and then we'd go back in and fill in the gaps. Of course, I was able to weld these up because that was cut to fit. So, yeah, it would have looked like that all the way around the back, but since I boogered up that corner so bad, I kind of just worked on getting that fixed off camera. I still have a little bit more to go this way, but that's fine. That's easy. It's all in good. I'll probably have to do some repairs on the back side of this corner, but that's okay. So I'll just show you a little bit about how you would go about it had you not made that mistake. Okay, so of course you don't want to introduce too much heat, so I'm just going to put a couple tacks, then skip one, put a couple tacks, skip, just so we keep from getting too much heat in any one area. You want to check, make sure your edges are smooth and together. You're doing a little bit of work. Just do it as you go. Okay, so I'm just going to keep doing that all the way back until the whole thing's welded up. Okay, I got the seam all welded up. Now I'm going to start doing all these plug welds. I'm going to leave the sheet metal screws in the floor for now, holding it down. I'll do all the plug welds, and I'll leave the where the sheet metal screws are for last, and then I'll pull those one by one and fill those in. That way I've always got that downward pressure. So I'll just do one and then show you, and then I'll go back and do all the rest off camera. So that's it. We'll just go and do them all. Alright, it's all welded in. All of our plug welds are done. We got some tools in the way, but of course we've got the seam welded all the way across. And we got all of our plug welds in the back done. All our screws are out and all those holes are filled. Now, we do have some flanges still down here that go down. I'm going to address those later. But for now, because I don't feel like crawling under the car yet, we're going to go ahead and start grinding down these welds. I'm going to use a variety of tools. I'll probably mostly be using this. That's 36 grit. That's stuff from Harbor Freight. This wheel here was originally a 5-inch wheel that I had on here. And of course, you wear the edges out first. So after that edge became dull, I cut it down to this size, whatever it is. I think it's a 2 or 2.5. So I'll use this, and also, along with some 5-inch ones that fit on here. I'll use these. This is also a coarse deal. Here's a smaller one. I'll use a combination of all this stuff. I'll also use this belt sander to get in some places where these don't reach very well. But really concentrate on staying on top of your welds. So when you're grinding on this thing, concentrate on staying only on the top of those welds. Because if you start getting into these, they'll thin out so fast, and you got bigger problems. So I'm going to use these really coarse discs to do the main portion of this, and then when I get these down close to flush, then I'll change to something a little finer and then kind of feather it all in. So that's where we're at, and that's what we're going to do. And I'll show you a little bit of it, and then I'll finish it off camera. So hopefully you can see how fast that cuts that down. So you really got to concentrate on staying on top. I'm just getting it close, and I'm going to come back in with something less aggressive and then smooth it out. I'm just going to keep doing that the whole way with this 36 grit first, and then I'll come back with something else. Alright, so I ground off most of the weld. You can see came out pretty good in most spots. There is a couple of holes, like I've got a hole here I need to fill, and there's a couple throughout, a couple little areas I'll probably touch up. I started grinding down the plug welds, so it's coming along pretty good. Remember I told you about being really careful about staying on top of your weld? Well, look what I did here. I thinned this out so much, I didn't realize I was doing it, and I was trying to grind off the weld right through here, and I didn't notice it, but my grinder was hitting that area right there, and look how it thinned it out and put a hole in it. So I'm going to have to fix that now. Alright, quick update. Just filling in a couple of the holes that I found. That's easy enough. But this mess that I made here, I showed you I ground that too thin. Man, that was a big mistake. So here I cut a piece out of it. What I did first was I took this. This is just a piece of the floor that we cut off up here somewhere. So I cut this out, put just a little bit of a bend in it because this curves just a little bit, and then I set it on here, trace it out, and cut the floor out, and now I'll put this in. But that's all because I didn't follow my own advice, which was being very careful about staying on top of those welds when I was grinding. So keep that in mind. Very important. Stay on top of those welds. Okay, crawling underneath now. We can take a look at how the underside looks. Come on, focus. So here's the weld here. This is the front of the car that way. So you can see how it looks. I've done nothing. I've done no work under here yet. So you can see there's a couple of little needles there that poked through some of the bigger holes when I was trying to weld them up. So that's no big deal. And around the back, it looks pretty good around that back side there. Let's try to take a closer look at the front. Oh, I know there's a lot of movement here, sorry. Let's see, can we see up in there? Okay, you can see I got a needle sticking through there. But other than that, that looks pretty good. It's not bad. So what I'm going to do is probably come in here with that belt sander. I think that's going to be the easiest thing for me to use. I probably won't sand all the way forward for now. I'll probably wait and do that once I pull the engine transmission out at some point, and then I'll finish the floor from this cross member forward. But I'm going to go ahead and finish off the back side now, and then also have the flanges that came down. Now, factory would have been, I don't know, I forgot to tell you this early maybe. These would be spot welded or plug welded here. So there would be, I should have drilled holes here to plug weld. Same with back here. Here's the flange up here. But I forgot to do it when I did the other side. And what I ended up doing on the other side was I just welded it all the way across here. And I got to thinking a little bit, like, since this is a unibody, maybe that'll just make it a little bit stronger anyway. So I decided to just do this one the same way. And since we replaced this inner rocker metal here, we'll have two good new surfaces to weld to. So when I get to that point, I'll show you. But for now, I'll probably come in here with the sander, start cleaning up this side of the weld, and then do any touch-ups that I need to do. Okay, so I'll be back. All right, I'm going to do a quick update before I move on. So, what I did, all the area above the weld, I cleaned it up better. I had cleaned it before I welded this in. I cleaned it, but only like an inch or so. I cleaned it up kind of as far as I could go. The drive shaft's still in here. But I cleaned it up. I used well, first I scraped as much as I could. You could see that's what was there. So I scraped up, and then I used some acetone and red Scotch-Brite and just cleaned the heck out of it. And then I came back through with a wire wheel, cleaned all this. I should have done this before I even started welding in, but oh well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and clean up these welds. This is the front. I'll probably just go up to this point here. And, you know, same thing all the way around. I'm not going to make it perfect because I'm seeing little light spots through, which I don't think I can show you on the video, but there's some light that I can see through. There you go, right there. You can see light through there. So I'm going to go ahead and grind this down most of the way, but not perfect, and then I'm going to go back through and I'm just going to weld this whole bottom side up again. Then we'll know we'll have a good weld, and then we'll grind it all off. And then there's a couple other little spots, like there's a spot on the floor here. I'll weld that from the top. I'll weld that up. And there's a couple of, sorry, I know this is difficult to watch probably. There's some spots I didn't get all the way welded through. I cleaned those up on the bottom. I'll weld those through from this side. And just get all the kind of the bottom weld stuff cleaned up and taken care of. And then we'll come back and we'll address this edge here, you know, and then there's some gaps here where we had to cut around the brace, and we'll deal with those when we come back. Okay, I mostly ground down this weld. I have to stop being a perfectionist. This is a floor. The top side of the floor is going to be covered by carpet and whatever else I decide to put down. And I'm going to seam seal this whole weld anyway. So what I am going to do, I'm not going to weld this whole thing again, because if I do, then I'm going to have to grind on the inside again because it's going to go through. So what I am going to do is, see this area like where there's light here? It's probably pretty thin because I probably ground it too thin on the other side. But I'm going to go through, I'm going to turn the light off in here and have the light on top. And I'm just going to circle all these spots where there's light. And then I'll weld those up. And then I'll grind this down, fairly flush. There's another light coming through. I'll grind this down fairly flush, which it almost is. Which really is probably good enough considering it's a floor. Again, don't let perfectionism get in your way. You want to drive this, not look at it in your shop forever. So do as I say, not as I do, like this. So I'm going to circle all those spots, and then I'll just touch up those spots and try to get them sealed up, and then we'll seam seal this whole weld. I think is what we're going to do. That is what I did on this other side, if you can see. But as you get better at doing things, you try to make it better and better. And frankly, what I did over here is probably just fine because it's solid and it seam sealed. And now I got over here and I was trying to make it perfect. And skill level and time and just what I'm trying to do here is not worth it. So let's just get the holes filled that we find so we can move on. Alright, so this is what it looks like. I welded these from the bottom. These are those spots that I circled. That's what they look like. There's one here. That was that hole I welded up from the top side. And there's one there. I thought there was one up here, but there wasn't. It was just a reflection. So now I'm going to put the light on the bottom, keep the top dark, and then do the same thing from the top if there's any light coming through. And then grind those down, and then we're going to be done with this. Alright, I've gone as far as I'm going to go with that seam. I don't want to make it any thinner. I filled all the holes I could find. It's been ground, both top and bottom side, and I'm done with it. I'm just going to cause myself more problems if I keep messing with it. Now, what's next? We got the flange that comes here and goes down along the bottom that I haven't touched yet, all the way across. That's where I said that it normally would get plug welded in spots, but I'm going to weld the whole thing, along the whole bottom seam there. But here's an interesting thing I've got going on. You see this? There's no gap here. Same in the back. No gap. But between here and here, I've got a bit of a gap. You can really see it here. I had the same thing on the other side when I did the other side. I don't know why. Aftermarket parts, I don't know. But what I did, you could probably just seam seal it and be done with it. But what I did with the other side, and what I'm going to do with this side, I've got all this scrap that I've cut off, the scrap from this floor. I'm going to take some of this, like you can see, this is a piece with the curve, and I'm going to put it down in here, and I'm going to get it to come up and over, and just kind of join it in here, piece by piece, to fill this gap up. So, I'll start figuring out what I'm going to do, and then as I start piecing it together, I'll show you what I'm doing. Again, you probably don't have to do this, but I'm going to do it. Alright, here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to take this piece, which was originally right here on that full floor before we cut it. It's got this curved edge here, and a flange. So I think I'm going to take it now, cut it off here and here, and make it so that it'll sit down in this groove, because it'll go in. If you look, if I just take a piece of flat floor here, you can see I got this gap here, and I don't have it, in the back, but up here is where I have that more of that gap. So I think I'll just take that flange, go down in, and then this curved portion will come up and just meet here, and then I'll just weld it across. So that's the plan. So I'll cut this and then start trimming it up and see how it fits. Alright, so here's that piece we cut out. You see that profile on it. So it'll slide down in here and then come up and lift to this edge. We'll weld it here. I have to notch it just like we do with the floor to get around the old floor pieces and the braces. Now, this area is a little bit tougher because this is where we have the biggest gap. So you can see what I'm doing here, hopefully. Actually, let's just peek on the bottom side real quick. Okay, so here's the piece. I just stuck down through here. It's just a flat piece. I'll pull it out and show it to you in a second. And once I get it all fit, I'll kind of trim it up and make it look better down here. But then we'll weld this to the inner rocker, and we'll weld this to this. Pull everything as tight as we can and get that buttoned up that way. But I'll show you how we're filling up the gap up here, and they pull it out, and you can see exactly what we're doing. So I'm just bending it. There's that gap. I'm just sort of bending it down, getting it to sit in there. And I'm just going to keep working it, bending over this top so we can get it all tightened up. Okay, so here's that piece that I showed you. I stuck it in there, tacked it on the bottom side so that it wouldn't rotate around and move. And then I just took a hammer and folded those edges over to get it to line up here. So now I'll just weld across here. And you can see now I have much less gap than I had before. And then we'll carry it on this way. So I'm going to weld that up now. I just wanted to show you how this is looking. So I welded up here. I started grinding off. This was all weld here. I ground that smooth, and I'm just working my way down. And I'm using this because it really gets in here pretty good. So I can get right down in there and not hit anything else. So that's what I'm using so far. So I'm going to keep going. But now you see our gap is much better. And get this all smoothed out, and then I'll come back, and I am thinking about possibly doing one more piece, just because I'm a perfectionist. But anyway, we'll see. All right, so there it is. I'm not going to make this perfect because this whole seam is going to get seam sealed anyway. So now this area here, I've got this piece. It's going to just sit in there like so. And we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to weld it across here, flatten it out, and that will take up that gap there. And then I've got this piece. That's the flange that goes down in between the two braces. So that'll go down back behind that flange. And same thing, it'll cover up that whole gap. And then we just got a little bit more to do back here. So again, this really is not necessary, so don't let this part feel daunting to you, because you could just seam seal all this and be done with it. But I don't like the big gap, so that's why I'm doing it. So I'm not going to show you anymore because you know what I'm doing. Well, I'll bring you back and let you see how it looks. I will throw some weld-through primer in here after I sand this all off. Before I weld it, I'll throw some weld-through primer on it so that everything down in the seam and all that will be covered. and I'll put weld-through primer on the back side of these. So let me get that done, and I'll come back. We'll look at it and go from there. All right, guys, because I can't leave stuff well enough alone. This gap isn't too bad, but I went and looked at some photos of stock floors, and the gap was definitely less than this still. Now, even though it doesn't go all the way through anymore because the piece we put in here flanged down and connected to the inner rocker, but we still have a bigger gap up here. So what I did is, let me see if I find a flat piece here. So I basically just took a flat piece. Remember, all I'm using is stuff that I've already cut off this floor. So I took a flat piece and just stuck it down in there as far as it would go, like so. And then I took a pen or a marker and I just drew it up and over this corner like that, which gave me a shape like this. Now, when this is sitting in here, I need to pound it in a little bit, but so what I did, now see, that's going to really remove the rest of that gap. So I'll get that sitting down in there, and then I think I told you earlier I took a hammer and knocked it over. Well, while that's true, I also did use, so this piece was flat, so it just stuck up straight, but I used a punch and just start punching it over, and I'll keep doing that. Well, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to primer, weld-through primer this area. I sanded off where we'll be welding up here, so I'm going to weld-through primer all that area in the back of this. And then when that's done, I'll bring you back and show you how I'm forming it and knocking it over. All right, I'm going to try to show you what I'm doing here. So the same procedure I used on the other side, or I mean on the first piece, and we're doing the second. Everything's been coated with weld-through primer. So I'm just sticking that piece down in, tap it down the best we can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack it up here to hold it, and then we're going to tap it down and weld it as we go. I need to tap this in a bit. If I can't get to pull the camera off and let you see what's going on. Okay, so you can see we're tacking it, and we're just knocking it down with the punch all along that seam as we go. You can see there's still a big gap there until we get up to here. So I'll just keep going. We'll keep pounding that down, tacking it in, and then we'll grind it off. Okay. Good enough. I'm trying not to overgrind it. Next piece, weld through on the bottom, weld through primer. Weld that in next. All right, so there's that piece. Now I'm making it all pretty. Here's the next piece. Now, I'm gonna go into the car and show you what this actually looks like, because I think I'm gonna trim it up a little bit. Okay. So here it is coming down. See? So I'll probably trim it up to match this one. So I'll mark across here and cut that off. And let's see if I can see what we did over here. Not really. I'll bring, after we're done with this, I'll bring a light down here and show you everything we did and what it's looking like and so forth. Cut that. One more piece to fill to this point here. This was just what was left of that, part of what was left of that flange that I cut off the bottom. So we'll get that last piece on and we'll get it all ground down. Alright, this is about done. Just filling in a couple small holes and that's it. Let's grind those off. Then we'll move to the bottom of the car. Alright, top side of the car is pretty well done. Now we're at the bottom side of the car. This is the rear end. Here's the flange that comes down. All this was tight along here, so I'm just going to weld it across here. Now, again, factory would be drilling holes here, punching holes here, and doing plug welds along this. On the other side, I forgot to do those, so I ended up just welding it all the way across. And again, I got to thinking that that's probably stronger anyway for a unibody car, so I'm just going to weld right across this lap joint. You can see, hopefully, we've got a little bit of a gap left here. That should weld right up. We've got another one here. I should be able to weld this up from the bottom here. And another one here. This is one of the areas where on the top side we had a big gap here between this and the inner rocker. So there's another piece behind it that slid down. So this is kind of double thick here. So we're going to do the same thing. We'll weld here. And then let me get the light over here. This side here. This is where we started filling gaps. This is that very first gap that we started filling. So if you remember, that's the piece that we put down through, and I tacked it in there to keep it straight while I hammered it over on the other side. So I'm just gonna, now I can go back through, weld all this up, and then I'll do the same thing all the way to the front of the floor. So that'll all be lap welded on there and should make it nice and strong. And I'll just keep going in spots so not to get too much heat in one spot. I'll work my way all the way down to the front of the car. Okay, I got it all welded up. There's some areas that look kind of burger weldy, but that's all right. This area was a little more difficult because there's two pieces of flange that come back here to fill that gap that was there. So that's a little rough there. And then I just did the same thing all the way to the front. So I'm not gonna sand this all perfect or grind it perfect, but I'm just gonna probably knock the top off of these, clean it up a little bit, because then I'm gonna seam seal the whole thing. So I'll knock that stuff off now. I'm not sure what I'll use yet, but I might use that belt sander. But I don't know. We'll see. All right, I ground down the top edges of the welds. It doesn't look beautiful, but I gotta stop trying to make everything perfect. So anyway, I went all the way to the front, and I clamped all this together and kind of booger welded it up there. But what I'm going to do now is shoot a coat of primer on this floor. Before I put it in, I think I showed to you, or told you, I scuffed this up with Scotch-Brite, red Scotch-Brite, so give it a little bit of tooth. So I just blew this whole thing out with air, and now I'm going to wipe it down with acetone and then primer the whole thing. And I'll do some masking too, because I don't want to get paint on the emergency brake cable or this brake line, the transmission shifter cable. And then on the inside, I'm going to do the same thing now. I did not scuff this yet, so I'm going to scuff this with red Scotch-Brite and get it all vacuumed out, cleaned up, and then shoot both the bottom and the top with primer, and then seam seal all the welds, all the areas underneath, up top. So I'll show all that. Alright, shot a coat of primer on it. Looks pretty darn good, actually. So I was getting ready to, hopefully you guys can see what's going on there. I didn't mask anything off, by the way, because I figured, first of all, the automatic transmission is coming out, so who cares about if I get paint on this or the speedometer cable. It'll come off easy. Yeah, this other stuff, we'll just paint over it as well. So, cross member here, I didn't care about because that's going to come out when I pull the engine and transmission. But the floor braces came out pretty good. Now, let's go up top real quick. Top side looks pretty good. Not perfect. And then I got some areas that I didn't do a great job on. It's my first time doing this, so it's a learning experience. So get ready to do the seam sealer. This is what I got. And right on the back of the can it says, do not apply over self-etching primer. And guess what I just primed this thing with? So I guess I'm going to shoot another coat of primer on this thing. That's not self-etching. Alright, I resprayed the floor, top and bottom, with a non-etching primer. I just used this. It's pretty cheap stuff. I want to say I might have got it at Harbor Freight, but so I have small town I live in, not a lot of inventory on sort of some stuff like this, seam sealers. So one store had one tube of this, one store had one tube of this, and then this one I actually ordered a while back because I wanted to try the brush on type. When I did the other half, I used something out of a caulking gun, so I wanted to give that a try, so I have that. However, both this one and this one say not to use on interior due to toxic fumes. I don't know. Does it cure and still give toxic fumes? I don't know. This one doesn't say that though, so I'll probably just use this on the inside. And then I'll probably try this one on the underneath. All three of them do say to use some Scotch-Brite and stuff wherever you're gonna fill. So I'll do that. I'll go around with Scotch-Brite and scuff those up, and then I'll wipe it down and then get started. Alright, let's see how this stuff does. Never used the brush-on kind before. And I've only used the other kind once, so pretty much all new to me anyway. Whew, it is pretty toxic smelling. So my plan is to do this shoot this in a coat of black paint, and then once the engine and transmission comes out, then I'll finish cleaning up all up under here, under the drive shaft and that, and get it all primered and painted, and then shoot it with some sort of bed liner stuff. I read pretty good stuff about the brand Rocket, and of course there's like Rhino liner, and my neighbor up the street, we did the top of his Ford Explorer, which was all, paint was all ruined on top of that, and we used shoot, I forget now the name of it, but you know, that sort of stuff, and it came out really nice, and it is tough, man. So I think that's what the plan is for underneath, and I'm thinking I may even do that on the inside of the car, because I would think that would help deaden the sound a bit and make it feel a little bit more solid. So this seems to be working okay. So I will just keep plugging away at this. For now, we'll just go to here. All right. I'm going to do all the way around and all the way around the weld seam. And then these pieces here, I'll put a bead around. This one goes from the bottom, so I'll put a bead around it and stick it. And then one in the front goes from the top. So I'll do that as well. Touched up a couple areas with the white sealant because I had it out. There was some small holes in. All right. Now I'm going to go underneath and shoot some paint on the bottom, and then we'll do the top. This is what I'm using. Alright, here's the bottom all painted up. This may not show well on video since it's black and all that, but it's all painted all the way up to the front. I didn't paint that cross member because the transmission leaks all over it anyway, so I'll take care of that later. But there's the bottom. I'll show you the top real quick. Alright, so here's the top side. All painted up, seam sealed, everything. I did get a run in my paint right here, but who cares? So it's all basically done now. I have to put the emergency brake system back in the car. That was all rusted, and the switch didn't work, so that's all fixed up and cleaned. If you're interested, I have a little video on that. It's pretty simple, but I need to put that back in, and I need to put the kick panel. I might leave the kick panel out because I'm going to replace it, so I'll probably leave the kick panel out. And then what I got to do, here's my seat frame I made. So I got to bolt that in, put the seat in. I ended up buying these Pro Car seats. I don't know how good they are. But if you buy them, don't buy the bracket that they try to sell. It's garbage. It doesn't line up right anyway. It's made cheaply, and it also mounts directly to the sheet metal. So I think you remember I had mentioned I've built solid mounts inside the braces. So I may bring you back one more time and just show you what it looks like with the seat in there, and then I'm just going to clean it up. This side, of course, was done earlier, and it is the same color. It's just filthy. So finally get back on the road. I know this is a long video. I appreciate anybody that stuck with it, and I hope you got something out of it. I was really making it for people like me who've never done this before, and I wanted to show you all the things that I ran into, because some of the videos I've seen didn't really show some of the critical areas that I think is common on these cars, like the rot underneath the toe boards, stuff like that. So next up on this car, I ordered new hinge pins. These hinges are welded onto the car and on the door, so there's no body adjustment really with the door other than these hinge pins. So I don't know if you can see the door lifting up. So I ordered new pins for that, and I ordered door skin. This one's toast, so I'm going to reskin the door and both doors and get them done, because I think in order to do the quarter panels or even fenders, since you have no door adjustment, I think you need to start with a good door foundation and build off of that, because that door is not going to be adjustable at all. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll probably just show you a photo at the end with the seats in it. But again, thank you for watching, and there's more stuff. I do have a video on those, how I made those seat frames, if you're interested in that too. So take care, and I'll see you on the next one. I have a floor and a seat. Finally.